6 months had passed since the expulsion, and the Galactic Council was growing nervous. They had expected many things from humanity. They had expected desperate communications, begging for trade agreements. They had expected black market dealings as humans tried to survive without council resources. They had expected economic collapse, food shortages, and eventually, humble requests to rejoin the galactic community. Instead, there was silence. Complete, perfect, terrifying silence. High Arbiter Vexthorian stood in his private office, reading the latest intelligence reports. His skin had turned a sickly yellow color, the Centauri shade of deep worry. "Nothing?" he asked his intelligence chief. 6 months and nothing at all? The intelligence chief, a Valani named Crystal Voice, hummed with confusion. "Our probes have scanned every known human colony. Our spies have monitored every communication channel we know about. The humans are simply living. Their cities are functioning. Their people are fed. Their economy appears stable." "That is impossible," Vexthorian said. 40% of their food came from council trade routes. 60% of their raw materials came from council mining agreements. They should be starving by now. "They should be," Crystal Voice agreed. "But they are not." In the dark space between spiral arms of the galaxy, far from any council patrol, Root, Commander Lisa Brennan stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest station. It was called Haven, though it appeared on no official map. Below her, arranged in perfect formation, 300 warships waited in the darkness. These were not the small patrol vessels the Council had inspected for 3 centuries. These were battleships, carriers, and destroyers built in secret shipyards on moons the Council had never discovered. Each one carried weapons the Council's scientists said were impossible. Each one was crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Lieutenant Kevin Shaw approached her with a tablet. "The Valani probe passed through Sector 7 again," he reported. "3rd time this week. They are getting curious about our border silence." Lisa smiled. It was the same smile Daniel Harper had worn 6 months ago. Patient, knowing. "Let them wonder," she said. "Let them send 100 probes. They will find nothing until we want them to find something." Kevin nodded and returned to his station. He had served under Lisa for 10 years, ever since he was recruited from the public navy into the Shadow Fleet. Like everyone in this room, he had lived a double life. To the Council, he was a minor officer on a cargo ship. In reality, he was one of humanity's elite commanders on Earth. President Marcus Cole addressed the United Nations in a closed session. The room was sealed, the windows blocked, and every communication device had been removed. Only the most trusted leaders of humanity were present. "For 300 years, Marcus began, we played by their rules. We let them inspect our facilities. We limited our expansion to systems they approved. We pretended to be the grateful newcomers, always thankful for council guidance." He paused and looked at the assembled faces. "That era is over." He pressed a button, and holographic displays filled the room. They showed maps of human territory, but not the maps the Council knew. These maps showed hidden colonies on 100 worlds. Secret mining operations in asteroid fields the Council had never surveyed. Research facilities buried in moons and floating in gas giants. "The Council expelled us expecting a weakened, isolated species," Marcus continued. "They have no idea what they actually did. They released the leash. They freed us from having to pretend." Defense Secretary Amanda Cruz stepped forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for brilliant strategy. "Our Shadow Fleet currently numbers 347 capital ships," she reported. "Our ground forces include 2 million soldiers equipped with technology 2 generations ahead of anything the Council has seen. Our production capabilities can double these numbers within 18 months." The room was silent as the leaders absorbed this information. For most of them, This was the first time they had seen the true scope of humanity's hidden power. Why? Asked Senator Paul Graham, an elderly man who had served in government for 40 years. Why did we hide for so long? If we had this power, why did we let them treat us like children? Marcus nodded slowly. It was a fair question. Because power without wisdom is just destruction, he said. 300 years ago, we were new to the galaxy. We were angry and eager to prove ourselves. If we had shown our true strength then, we would have started a war we might have won, but at a terrible cost. He walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. So we waited. We learned. We watched every species in the council, studied their strengths and weaknesses, understood their politics and their fears. We built our forces in secret, not for conquest, but for protection. We wanted to be so strong that no one would ever dare to threaten us. Amanda Cruz continued the explanation. The council's expulsion was actually helpful. For 3 centuries, we had to maintain our disguise. We had to let them inspect some facilities, which meant we could only hide so much. Now, without their inspectors and their spies, we can finally operate openly. Our production has increased by 300% since the expulsion. Back on the council station, Ambassador Ziranel was conducting her own investigation. She had spent 6 months gathering every piece of information she could find about humanity. She had read their history, studied their culture, and analyzed every interaction they have ever had with the council. What she found disturbed her deeply. Humans were predators. Not like the Krethva, who hunted in swarms, or the Volani, who consumed energy from stars. Humans were persistence predators, creatures who chased their prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They did not fight with speed or strength. They fought with patience and endurance. And they had been patient for 300 years. Ziranel requested a meeting with High Arbiter Vextorian, but he refused to see her. The senior council members were still celebrating humanity's expulsion. They did not want to hear warnings from a junior ambassador, so Ziranel did something dangerous. She sent a secret message to the one human she still had contact with, a former trade negotiator named Daniel Harper. The message was simple. What are you planning? The response came 3 days later. It contained only 5 words that made Ziranel's blood run cold. You will see soon enough. In the darkness between stars, the Shadow Fleet continued its preparations. Engineers made final adjustments to weapon systems. Pilots ran simulation after simulation. Commanders reviewed battle plans that had been refined over decades. And Commander Lisa Brennan stood at her window, watching the stars, waiting for the signal that would change the galaxy forever. The silence was about to end. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Thousands of seats rose in circular tiers, each one filled with a delegate from a different alien civilization. Today, every seat was full. Today, history was being made. High Arbiter Vextorian stood at the central podium. He was a centauri, tall and thin with gray skin that shifted colors based on his emotions. Right now, his skin was deep purple, the color of authority and judgment. His 4 eyes swept across the chamber as he prepared to speak. The council has reached its decision, he announced. His voice echoed through translation devices in every language. After careful review of all evidence, we find the human species guilty of multiple violations. Unauthorized expansion into restricted sectors. Refusal to share military technology as required by membership agreements. And most seriously, the development of weapons that violate 17 different treaties. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Volani delegates, creatures of living crystal, chimed with excitement. The insectoid Krethva clicked their mandibles in satisfaction. For 300 years, Humanity had been a minor member of the council, always asking questions, always pushing boundaries. Many species had grown tired of them. Vexthorian raised one of his 4 arms for silence. Therefore, by unanimous vote of the senior species, Earth and all human colonies are hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All trade agreements are cancelled. All diplomatic relations are severed. Humanity will be removed from council space within 48 standard hours. He turned his 4 eyes toward the small human delegation. Ambassador Daniel Harper sat in the lowest tier, the section reserved for junior species. He was a man of 50 years, with gray hair and calm brown eyes. Beside him sat his small team of aides. They looked tiny compared to the massive aliens surrounding them. Everyone in the chamber expected chaos. When the Vellani had been sanctioned 2 centuries ago, they had shattered 3 walls with sonic protests. When the Krethva lost trading rights to the outer sectors, their delegates had swarmed the podium in fury. Every species reacted to bad news with anger and desperation. Daniel Harper simply nodded. He gathered his documents slowly, placing each one carefully in his case. Then he stood up and adjusted his suit jacket. The chamber fell completely silent. 400 alien delegates held their breath, waiting for the explosion. "We understand," Daniel said. His voice was quiet but clear. "We will have our people off the station within the required time. Thank you for the 3 centuries of membership." Then he turned and walked toward the exit. His aides followed behind him, their footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Not one of them looked back. Not one of them showed any emotion at all. The doors closed behind them with a soft click. For a long moment, nobody moved. High Arbiter Vexthorian stood frozen at his podium, his skin shifting through confused colors. The Vellani had stopped chiming. The Krethva had stopped clicking. The entire chamber seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. Ambassador Zironel of the Centauri was the first to speak. She was younger than Vexthorian, with silver skin and sharp intelligence in her 4 eyes. "That was not normal," she said slowly. "That was not normal at all." Beside her, a Krethva commander named Crixville made a harsh sound. "The humans are finally learning their place. They know they cannot survive without council support. Their economy depends on our trade routes. Their technology depends on our shared research. Within a year, they will be begging to return." "Perhaps," Zironel said. But she was not convinced. She had studied humans for decades. She had watched them carefully at every council meeting. They were strange creatures, always smiling, always polite, always asking innocent questions. But sometimes, when they thought no one was watching, she had seen something else in their eyes. Something patient, something waiting. That night, Zironel could not sleep. She kept replaying the moment in her mind. The way Daniel Harper had nodded. The way he had gathered his papers so calmly. The way his entire team had walked out without a single word of protest. She had seen many species receive bad news in that chamber. She had seen rage, despair, threats, and tears. But she had never seen acceptance. Perfect, calm, complete acceptance. As if they had been expecting this. As if they had been waiting for it. Across the station, the human delegation was packing their belongings. Daniel Harper stood at the window of his quarters, looking out at the stars. His aide, a young woman named Grace Palmer, approached him carefully. "Sir," she said, "the council is already celebrating. They think we're finished." Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something in it that made Grace shiver. "Let them celebrate," he said. "They've earned this moment. They've spent 300 years watching us, limiting us, inspecting every ship we built and every colony we founded." He turned from the window. "Do you know what the hardest part of the last 3 centuries has been?" Grace shook her head. "Pretending to be weak," Daniel said. pretending to be the grateful newcomers, always thankful for council guidance. Hiding our best scientists in remote facilities. Building our real fleet in shipyards they never knew existed. Watching them treat us like children while we smiled and nodded. He took a deep breath. That ends tonight. Grace felt her heart beating faster. The Prometheus protocol? Send the signal, Daniel said. Let our people know. The waiting is over. On 17 hidden moons across the galaxy, in secret facilities buried deep underground, lights began to turn on. Scientists who had worked in shadows for generations finally looked at their completed projects. Engineers ran final checks on ships that had never been registered with any council database. Soldiers who had trained in secret prepared for orders they had waited their whole lives to receive. And in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, the celebrations continued. The Vellani chimed their victory songs. The Krethva planned how to divide human trading routes among themselves. High Arbiter Vexthorian accepted congratulations for finally putting the troublesome humans in their place. None of them noticed the smile on Ziranel's face as she left the chamber. None of them saw the worry in her 4 eyes. And none of them understood what she had realized in that moment of terrible clarity. The humans had not looked defeated when they walked out. They had not looked angry or sad or desperate. They had looked relieved, and that, Ziranel knew, should terrify everyone. The distress signal from Nexus Prime reached the council station on a quiet morning. It was a Krethva colony, home to 3 million insectoid beings who lived in massive hive structures built into the planet's mountains. The message was desperate and terrifying. A plague had swept through the colony. It attacked the nervous system, causing paralysis and death within days. Krethva medicine could slow the disease, but not stop it. Already, 50,000 had died. Without help, the entire colony would be gone within 2 months. High Arbiter Vexthorian called an emergency session of the council. Medical experts from every species examined the data and reached the same conclusion. The plague was beyond their ability to cure. The nearest Centauri medical fleet was 8 months away. By the time help arrived, Nexus Prime would be a graveyard. Hive Commander Crixtel, leader of Nexus Prime, sent one final message to the council. We accept our fate, he said, his voice clicking with despair. We ask only that you remember us. Then, on the 3rd day of the plague, something unexpected happened. A ship appeared in orbit around Nexus Prime. It was human. The vessel was called the Mercy, a medical ship that officially did not exist. Its captain, Dr. Katie Morrison, was a woman of 45 years with steady hands and kind eyes. She had spent 20 years working in humanity's secret medical program, developing treatments the council had never imagined. Commander Crixtel did not know what to do. Humanity had been expelled from the council. They were supposed to be enemies now, but his people were dying, and this strange ship was offering help. Why are you here? He demanded through the communication channel. What do you want from us? Katie's response was calm and simple. We are here because your people are suffering. We want nothing except to help. After a long moment of silence, Crixtel made his decision. Pride meant nothing when children were dying. You may land, he said. But I warn you, human. If this is a trick, I will kill you myself. Katie smiled gently. It is no trick, Commander. Just doctors doing what doctors do. The Mercy landed outside the largest hive structure. Katie led her team of 50 medical specialists onto the surface. They wore simple white uniforms with a Red Cross symbol, the ancient human sign of healing. They carried cases of equipment the Krethva had never seen before. The first patient they treated was a young female, barely an adult by Krethva standards. Her body was paralyzed, her eyes clouded with pain. Krethva doctors had given her 2 days to live. Katie scanned her with a small device. then loaded a clear liquid into an injector. "This is nanomedicine," she explained to the watching Krethva physicians. "Microscopic machines that will repair the damage to her nervous system." She pressed the injector to the patient's neck. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the young female took a deep breath. Her eyes cleared. Her limbs began to move. Within an hour, she was sitting up and asking for food. Word spread through the colony like fire. The humans had medicine that could cure the plague. The humans were saving lives. Krethva, who had prepared for death, found themselves recovering completely. Katie and her team worked without rest for 2 weeks. They treated thousands of patients. They trained Krethva doctors to use the human equipment. They set up manufacturing systems to produce more nanomedicine locally. When the plague was finally contained, Commander Krickstall summoned Katie to his command chamber. He was a massive creature, twice her height, with powerful mandibles that could crush stone. But when he looked at her, there was something new in his compound eyes: respect and confusion. "You have saved my people," he said slowly. 3 million Krethva will live because of you. I do not understand why." Katie sat down across from him, completely unafraid despite his size. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply. "Because your children deserve to live. Because suffering is suffering, regardless of politics." Krickstall clicked his mandibles in frustration. "But the council expelled you. We voted for your removal. We celebrated your humiliation. Why would you help those who hurt you?" Katie considered her answer carefully. "Commander, humanity has learned many hard lessons throughout our history. We have made terrible mistakes. We have hurt each other in ways I cannot describe." She paused. "But we have also learned that kindness is stronger than hatred. That helping others does not make you weak. That the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them a friend." Krickstall was silent for a long time. Finally, he asked a question that truly bothered him. "How did you create this medicine? Your species was supposed to be primitive. Your technology was supposed to be inferior to ours. How is it possible that you can cure diseases our scientists cannot even understand?" Katie smiled sadly. "Because we were never primitive, Commander. We only let you believe we were." She stood up and prepared to leave. Before she went, she handed Krickstall a small data chip. "This contains manufacturing instructions for the nanomedicine. Enough to protect your colony for generations. We ask nothing in return." "Nothing?" Krickstall could not believe it. "No trade agreements? No political alliance? Nothing?" "Nothing," Katie confirmed. "Except perhaps that you remember this day. Remember that when your people were dying, humans came to help. Not for profit, not for power. Just because it was right." The Mercy departed that evening, vanishing into the darkness between stars. Behind them, they left a colony full of living beings who should have been dead. They left Krethva doctors with technology they could not have invented for centuries. They left questions that would shake the foundations of the council. The news reached the council station within hours. High Arbiter Vexthorian read the reports with growing horror. Human medical technology was at least 200 years ahead of anything the council possessed. Human ships could travel through space faster than council vessels. Human science had advanced far beyond what any of their inspectors had ever seen. Ambassador Ziranel found him in his office, staring at the reports. "You see it now," she said quietly. "You understand." Vexthorian looked at her with frightened eyes. "How is this possible? We monitored them for 3 centuries. We inspected their facilities. We controlled their development. We controlled what they showed us," Ziranel corrected. "We saw what they wanted us to see. The real humanity, the true extent of their capabilities, was always hidden." She sat down heavily. "We thought we were watching them, but they were watching us." More reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Human ships had been spotted in 12 systems the Council considered unreachable. Human technology was appearing on black markets, devices that Council engineers could not even understand. Human colonies existed on worlds that should have been uninhabitable. The picture becoming clear was terrifying. Humanity had not spent 3 centuries as the Council's grateful students. They had spent 3 centuries pretending while building something far greater in the shadows. And now, they were finally stepping into the light. Fear spread through the Galactic Council like poison in water. The reports from Nexus Prime had changed everything. Humanity was not the weak, isolated species they had expelled. Humanity was something far more dangerous. Something they did not understand. High Counselor Dexaron of the Vallani called an emergency meeting of the senior species. He was ancient even by Vallani standards, a crystalline being who had witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen civilizations. His voice rang through the chamber like breaking glass. "We must act now," he declared, "before the humans grow any stronger, before they decide to take revenge for their expulsion." Admiral Zorn of the Centauri fleet nodded in agreement. He was a warrior, scarred from countless battles, and he recognized a threat when he saw one. "My fleet can be mobilized within 30 days. If we strike quickly, we can destroy their hidden bases before they are fully prepared." Ambassador Ziranel stood up to object. "This is madness," she said. "We know almost nothing about their true capabilities. We do not know how many ships they have or where they are located. An attack could be exactly what they want." Dexaron dismissed her with a wave of crystalline fingers. "The young always counsel caution. But we did not build this council by being cautious. We built it by being strong." The vote was swift and decisive. The Galactic Council would mobilize its combined fleet against humanity. 12 species contributed ships to the Armada. 2,000 vessels gathered at the Orion checkpoint, the traditional staging point for major military operations. Admiral Zorn took command of the fleet. He arranged his ships in a classic containment formation, designed to surround human space and squeeze them into submission. It was a strategy that had worked against a dozen rebellious species throughout Council history. On Bastion Station, deep in the hidden regions of human territory, Admiral Christopher Dunn received the intelligence reports. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Behind him, holographic displays showed the position of every Council ship in the galaxy. "They are mobilizing faster than expected," he announced to his assembled commanders. "The Vallani convinced the Council that we are an existential threat." He paused and allowed himself a small smile. "They are not wrong." Commander Lisa Brennan studied the enemy deployments carefully. She had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, planning every detail of humanity's response. "They are massing at the Orion checkpoint," she observed. "Classic containment formation. They expect us to defend, to dig in and wait for a siege." Christopher nodded. "That is exactly what they expect. Which is why we are not going to do that." He pressed a button, and new orders flashed across the fleet network. 300 ships began moving into position, but they were not heading toward the Orion checkpoint. They were heading somewhere else entirely. Back on the Council station, Ambassador Ziranel made one final attempt to prevent disaster. She requested a private meeting with High Arbiter Vexthorian and presented her research. "Look at their history," she begged. "Humans are persistent predators. They do not fight the way we expect. They do not meet strength with strength. They wait. They adapt. They find weaknesses and exploit them." Vexthorian listened but was unmoved. "We have 2,000 ships," he said. "They have, what, a few hundred at most? Superior numbers win wars. That is a law of the universe." Ziranel shook her head sadly. "Superior numbers won wars against species who fought by your rules. Humans do not fight by anyone's rules except their own. On the third day of the Council's mobilization, the first human fleet appeared. But it did not appear at the Orion checkpoint where the Armada was waiting. It appeared directly above Centauri Prime, the homeworld of Vexthorian's own species. 100 human warships materialized from fold space, a method of travel that Council physicists had declared impossible. They hung in the sky above the planet, weapons ready but not firing. They did not attack. They simply appeared, demonstrating capabilities that should not exist. Panic swept through the Centauri population. Millions looked up at the sky and saw humanity's power for the first time. Defense systems activated but could not lock onto the human ships. Centauri fighters launched but could not match the human speed and maneuverability. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, the human ships vanished. They folded space and were gone, leaving behind only terror and confusion. The message was clear. We can reach you anywhere. Your defenses mean nothing. Your homeworlds are not safe. Admiral Zorn received the news while his fleet waited at the Orion checkpoint. His face turned pale as he realized the truth. He had brought 2,000 ships to guard one border while the humans simply appeared behind him. His classic strategy was useless against an enemy who could ignore the rules of warfare. President Marcus Cole's transmission reached every inhabited world simultaneously. His image appeared on screens across the galaxy, calm and composed, speaking in a voice that carried the weight of 3 centuries of preparation. "People of the Galactic Council," he began, "we never wanted war. We wanted to be left alone to grow, to develop, to become the best version of ourselves. For 300 years, we followed your rules. We accepted your inspections. We limited our expansion to please your demands." He paused and let his words sink in. "You refused to let us live in peace. You expelled us from your community. You celebrated our humiliation. And now you have gathered your fleet to destroy us." His eyes hardened. "That will not happen. What you have seen today is only a small demonstration of our capabilities. We can appear above any of your homeworlds within hours. We can disable your defenses without firing a shot. We can end this war before it truly begins." On the Council station, the assembled delegates watched in horror. Everything they believed about humanity was crumbling. The weak species they had dismissed was now revealing power beyond anything they had imagined. Marcus continued, "But we are not here to conquer. We are not here for revenge. We are here to establish new terms. Equal terms. The terms that should have existed from the beginning." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "You have one chance. One opportunity to avoid a war you cannot win. Recall your fleet. Meet with our representatives. Accept that humanity is not your student, not your subject, but your equal." He straightened and delivered his final warning. "If you refuse, if you continue this aggression, you will see what 3 centuries of quiet preparation truly looks like. And I promise you, it will be the last thing many of you ever see." The transmission ended. Silence filled the council chamber. Admiral Zorn looked at his fleet of 2,000 ships, suddenly understanding how meaningless those numbers were. High Counselor Thexaron stood frozen, his crystalline body dimmed with shock. High Arbiter Vexthorian stared at the empty screen, finally comprehending the terrible mistake they had made. Only Ziranel moved. She walked to the communication panel and opened a channel to the human delegation. "Ambassador Harper," she said quietly, "I believe we need to talk." On Bastion Station, Daniel Harper smiled as he received her message. The storm was gathering, but humanity had been preparing for this storm for 300 years. They were ready. The war lasted 11 days. In the history of the galaxy, it would be remembered as the shortest and strangest conflict ever recorded. Not because of the destruction it caused, but because of the destruction it avoided. On the first day, human fleets appeared above the homeworlds of all 12 species that had contributed ships to the Council Armada. They did not fire a single weapon. They simply appeared, hung in the sky for exactly 1 hour, and then vanished. The message was clear. We can reach you all. None of you are safe. On the third day, Admiral Zorn attempted to attack a human supply convoy. His ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, expecting to find cargo vessels. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by human warships that had been waiting for them. The humans disabled every weapon system on every council ship without killing a single crew member. Then they sent Zorn home with a message. Next time, we will not be so gentle. On the fifth day, the humans demonstrated their intelligence capabilities. They broadcast Council military communications to Council commanders before the commanders received them through their own channels. They knew every secret code, every hidden frequency, every classified protocol. 3 centuries of pretending to be inferior had given them access to everything. On the 7th day, a human fleet appeared inside the most secure military installation in Council space. Not near it, inside it. They had somehow bypassed every defense system, every detection grid, every security measure. They downloaded the entire contents of the Council's strategic database and left a note that simply said, "Your secrets were never secret." By the 9th day, panic had consumed the Council leadership. High Counselor Vexaron suffered a nervous collapse. Admiral Zorn refused to leave his quarters. Species that had eagerly voted for war were now blaming each other for the disaster. On the 11th day, the Council voted to surrender. Ambassador Ziranel was chosen to deliver the message. She traveled alone to the coordinates the humans provided, a space station she had never seen before, in a region of space the Council had believed was empty. When she arrived, she found not a military fortress, but something that looked almost like a city floating in space. Beautiful, peaceful, a place built for living, not for war. Daniel Harper met her at the docking bay. He looked the same as he had 11 months ago, when he had calmly accepted humanity's expulsion, patient, knowing that there was something new in his eyes now. Not triumph, something closer to relief. "Ambassador," he said warmly, "thank you for coming." Ziranel studied him carefully. "You could have destroyed us. You had the power to burn our worlds and scatter our people across the stars. Why didn't you?" Daniel guided her through the station, past parks and gardens and areas where human families lived and worked. "Because that was never what we wanted," he said. "We did not spend 3 centuries hiding so we could become conquerors. We hid because we wanted to survive. We wanted to grow strong enough that no one would ever threaten us again." He stopped at a window overlooking the stars. "When you're weak, others control your fate. When you're strong, you control your own. That's all we ever wanted. Control over our own destiny." The peace negotiations took place in the grand chamber of the Council station, the same room where humanity had been expelled 11 months earlier. But everything was different now. Daniel Harper did not stand at the petitioner's podium. He sat at the head of the table, in the seat reserved for the most senior species. "We are not here to rule you," he announced to the assembled delegates. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "We are not interested in your territory or your resources. We have plenty of our own." He let those words sink in. "We are here to establish new terms. Equal terms. No more inspections of human facilities. No more restrictions on human development. No more treating us like children who need supervision." High Arbiter Vexthorian, diminished and exhausted, raised one trembling arm. "May I ask a question?" Daniel nodded. Double quotes. "Why did you hide for so long?" Vexthorian asked. The question seemed to cause him physical pain. "You could have dominated us centuries ago. You could have taken control of the council from the beginning. Why did you wait? Daniel considered his answer carefully. Every delegate in the chamber leaned forward, desperate to understand. Because power without wisdom is just destruction, he said finally. 300 years ago, we were new to the galaxy. We were angry and frightened and eager to prove ourselves. If we had shown our true strength then, we would have started wars. We would have made enemies. We would have become the very thing we feared. He stood and walked slowly around the table, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. So we waited. We watched. We learned about every species in this council, your cultures and your histories and your dreams. We studied your mistakes so we would not repeat them. We built our strength in secret, not for conquest, but for protection. He returned to his seat. And then you expelled us. You freed us from having to pretend. You gave us the gift of being ourselves for the first time in 3 centuries. Commander Crickstall of the Krethva stood up. Unlike the other delegates, he did not look afraid. He looked thoughtful. The humans saved my people, he announced to the chamber. When we were dying, they came to help. They asked for nothing in return. They simply healed our sick and left. He turned to face Daniel. I voted for your expulsion. I celebrated your humiliation. And yet, when my children were dying, you saved them anyway. His voice clicked with emotion. Why? Daniel smiled gently. It was the same smile Katie Morrison had worn on Nexus Prime. Because kindness is not weakness, Commander. Because helping others does not diminish us. Because the galaxy does not have to be a place of fear and competition. He paused. It can be a place of cooperation and growth. If we choose to make it so. The treaty was signed that evening. It granted humanity full equality in galactic affairs. It ended all restrictions on human development. It established new rules for interaction between species. Rules based on respect rather than hierarchy. But more importantly, it changed something fundamental about the galaxy itself, in the weeks that followed. Human doctors traveled to 12 worlds to share medical technology. Human engineers helped species solve problems they had struggled with for centuries. Human teachers opened schools where anyone could learn, regardless of their species or status. The galaxy had expected humanity to demand revenge. Instead, humanity offered partnership. Years later, Ambassador Ziranel wrote a history of these events. She spent a long time trying to find the right words for the final paragraph. Eventually, she settled on this. We expelled humanity, expecting to break them. We mobilized for war, expecting to destroy them. We surrendered, expecting to be conquered. In every case, we were wrong. Humanity did not want to rule the galaxy. They wanted to be part of it. They wanted to contribute, to share, to help. They had hidden for 3 centuries, not because they feared us, but because they were waiting until they were wise enough to use their power well. She paused and added one final sentence. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson humanity taught us. True strength is not measured by the ability to destroy. It is measured by the wisdom to know when not to. And in the grand chamber where humanity had once been expelled, a new plaque now hung on the wall. It contained only 5 words, the same 5 words Daniel Harper had sent to Ziranel during the months of silence. You will see soon enough. Now, the galaxy understood what those words truly meant. They had seen, and they would never forget.